Hi everyone, welcome to another live episode of Before You Take the LSAT. Before You Take the LSAT is an online resource with the mission to provide aspiring lawyers and future law students insights into the various career paths that exist with a JD degree. My name is Doreen Benyamin, and I interview various law students, recent grads, and lawyers talking about their unique path. Today, I get to speak to Jake Sussman. He's a recent graduate of Harvard Law School, class of 2018. Jake has an extremely unique path in that he dropped out of high school at the age of 14. He attended community college and transferred to Rutgers, all before starting Harvard Law School at the age of 20. Jake continued to excel throughout law school, becoming one of only 6 law students in the entire country to serve as a business consulting intern at one of the top 3 consulting firms in the country, Boston Consulting Group, during his first summer. The following summer, Jake served as a summer associate at Simpson Thacher, one of the top 10 law firms in the country, known for its selectivity in hiring students who earn high grades in top 14 law schools. And currently, Jake is the COO and co-founder of a legal tech startup called Evisort, an opportunity which he chose to pursue after turning down an offer from McKinsey to work full-time post-graduation. Did I get that all right?
Sounds good.
Okay, awesome. So just so you know, if you haven't been here for an interview before, how this works is I ask questions that I have prepared, but we love audience interaction. So if you have questions, you're welcome to submit. I see somebody already submitted a question. The only thing is that I ask that you ask questions that might be more relevant to Jake. If it's about the LSAT or anything like that, and it's more general, I can answer that in future videos that are focused on just that topic. And also, we may not answer every single question. It's up to Jake what he feels comfortable with. But we'd love for you to submit, and if we can answer it, we'd be more than happy to. And with that, I think we're gonna get started. Really excited to have you all here watching and listening. It's really exciting. Okay, how are you doing?
Good.
That was a lot of me talking. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's really cool to be here at the Harvard Innovation Lab. We just got to speak to Jerry, one of the co-founders. And yeah, okay. So I think we're gonna start with one of the first parts of your story, which is dropping out of high school. So obviously you're really motivated and driven to get to where you've gotten to now. And so my question is, what was going through your mind when you decided to drop out of high school at 14? And did you have a plan moving forward, or was it a decision that, you made with the intention of figuring out along the way?
Wouldn't it be cool if I had a plan?
I mean, you were 14, so
Yeah.
It's fair if you didn't, but I'm sure that you also had reasons.
Yeah, I wish I had a plan. I didn't.
Okay.
When I was in elementary school, I was not a good student.
Okay.
And high school wasn't any different.
Okay.
So wasn't into class, usually skipped it.
Wow.
And so by the time I was 14, it was just, I kind of hit a dead end there.
Okay.
I was also in a religious school.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I'm not very religious. And so that...
You haven't been religious?
I'm not religious, no.
Okay.
And so you can imagine I didn't love it.
Yeah.
And so when I was 14 and I was in a school that focuses on the religious aspect of it, and I'm already not a great student, I kind of just hit a wall where I said, why continue?
Yeah.
And so I basically stopped going to school, dropped out, started working, but did not have a plan.
So where did you work once you left high school?
Yeah, so I worked in a nonprofit, and I made some money in some like odd jobs that I had. I was a little bit like I just hustled and tried to have different things I had going on, where I sold some stuff on eBay until they shut me down because apparently you have to be 18 to sell there.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I've forgiven them yet. But
were you growing a lot when they shut you down? I'm assuming.
I was working on it. Might have been my first startup if I had succeeded there.
Yeah.
But PayPal caught on to me.
Okay.
And so
how did they know?
They make you prove it with your social security number at some point along the way.
Okay.
Yeah, so
you already had like seeds of interest in like entrepreneurship and business. Was that the first time that you had anything entrepreneurial?
Probably. When I was in school, because I wasn't focused on class,
Mm-hmm.
I ended up organizing a lot of events. And so I did like a carnival once where we hired a magician for like $2,000 an hour and sold like basically sold out a packed room to make some money. That was for for a charity, but that's like probably the first time I ever had to organize something where I had to go and ask people for money.
And I'm assuming you had a good experience, and that kind of made you interested to continue.
It was a good magic show.
Okay. And then, so at what point did you decide I'm going to go to community college and go back to school again?
Yeah. So after I stopped going to school, I moved to New York for maybe about a year
Yeah.
and wasn't doing very much. I was working on these jobs, wasn't really moving anywhere.
You moved from New Jersey to New York.
That's right.
Yeah, okay.
I grew up in New Jersey if my accent doesn't show
So
it.
you moved really far.
Yeah, across the river.
Just kidding. Okay.
In New Jersey, we like to think we're close to New York,
Yes.
but
Just kidding.
in New
Okay.
York they say otherwise.
Yeah.
And so moved across and was working these odd jobs, playing sports and just having fun.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, I had other friends who dropped out too.
Oh, wow.
And
Was it common in your neighborhood?
it wasn't like an epidemic, but there was enough people that I had a couple friends who dropped out.
Yeah.
That
That helps, I think.
It's good and bad.
Yeah.
We might influence each other.
Right.
And so I saw what they were doing.
Mhm.
They were generally like working in restaurants, working in fast food. And that's fine. Like I done the same too.
Mm-hmm.
Got to make money, but I knew I didn't want to do that longer term.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really know where I would go from there.
Yeah.
But started spending a little bit of time, maybe an hour a day, studying for the SAT and GED,
Mm-hmm.
which is like the high school equivalent diploma.
Why the SAT? Okay. You didn't need the SAT for community college.
I wish I'd known that.
So you were studying for a test that you didn't need?
It ended up saving me like 4 community college classes because I didn't have to take the prereqs.
Okay.
But if you've taken the SAT, I don't know how it ranks among tests, but
Mhm.
compared to the GED, it's a lot harder. So I basically didn't have to study for the high school equivalency diploma afterwards
Mhm.
because I'd already studied for the harder version.
Okay.
And so I kind of killed 2 birds with 1 stone and then got out of some classes.
Okay. That's cool. Okay, so then did you know when you start so when you were at what is Oceans Community College?
Ocean County College, yeah.
Ocean County College. And that was in New York or New Jersey?
New Jersey.
And you already knew that you were studying business at that point?
I did not know that.
Because your concentration was in business at the community college.
It was. I went in there and, to be honest, I didn't know how college worked.
Okay.
I didn't really know what a major was, even. I remember showing up to the first day of class, and it was my first class in like 2 years or 3 years.
Yeah.
And so I was just kind of learning it all and taking it in.
Mm-hmm.
But when they asked me what major you want to be, I said, I don't know. So they put down general studies business. But I think we talked about it before with my background. I knew I wanted to do something involving the business side.
Yeah.
So I didn't know. I've never heard of consulting at the time or anything like that. But
Yeah.
if I was to like throw a dart and pick which one I'd end up in, that would probably be where I would have picked.
Okay, and then did you have an idea of where you want? I mean, you went to Rutgers, but did you have an idea that that was where you wanted to go next?
Nope.
Did you have a mentor throughout all of this at all?
So not so much for the college side, but I did have somebody who, like from when I was younger, when I was in 8th grade or so.
Yeah.
I never finished elementary school either. Community college was my first graduation.
Wow.
But
Wow.
he's somebody who I got to know, who became a very close mentor of mine. He had been expelled from school when he was in 6th grade.
Wow. Were you expelled?
I was never. It was close, but I never.
Were you a troublemaker?
I had a good time.
Okay.
So if you're not studying, what else are you going to do with all your time in school?
Right.
And so
Were you were you rebellious? Was there something about school that you were just rebelling against?
Oh, absolutely.
And what was it that you were rebelling against?
It's a very the school in particular. I think it may have improved since then, but at the time was very one size fits all.
Was it part of that because it was very religious?
That definitely had a part of it.
Okay.
But so they were still. I think it's changed, but at the time it was very one size fits all, and I didn't really fit into that bucket, and so I wasn't a fan. And so instead of focusing on my studies, I focused on having a good time.
Yeah.
So like everything from, I don't know what to say this on a video, but breaking into the principal's office, throwing things on the bus or whatever it was. I tested the limits.
Okay, so how do you think that your background, that specifically, like coming from a religious community or a religious school, affected your transition away from that affected your career path and your decisions? Obviously, it affected the fact that you wanted to leave school and move on. But do you think that there was any other effect that it had?
It's interesting because I never thought of myself as a good student.
Okay, that's crazy. So you never imagined yourself where you are now?
Oh, definitely not.
Okay.
I mean, I'm still not a great student. You probably don't want to see my law school grades. But
Okay, we'll talk about that because.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think I just, when I thought about school, maybe it was a bit different. But if you look at my classmates, there are others too like that who maybe weren't the best in undergrad or weren't the best especially in elementary school.
Yeah.
In college is a bit different because college is voluntary. You get to choose your own course.
Mhm.
I was shocked when I got a good grade in my first course there. I was like, I had never seen an A before. And so...
at Rutgers or community college?
Community college.
Okay.
That was when I was like, okay, maybe it's possible.
Yeah. Did you like your experience at community college or Rutgers better? I asked because I also went to community college and
Yeah.
I had a better experience at community college. I felt like in some ways.
I think they're different. Both times they were commuter schools, so I didn't have like the true college experience.
Yeah.
So I can't speak to like what the Rutgers party scene is like or anything like that. Community college was, I like both.
Yeah.
But community college was easier. It was closer to home.
Okay.
And I think the professors here were more practitioner focused,
Mm-hmm.
where like the person who's teaching accounting was somebody who just retired and was now teaching it as an adjunct.
Yeah.
There's much more of that, and I like that a lot
Okay.
because you're learning from people who've actually done
Yeah,
it.
who are in it.
That was what
And
they
are
did all
still in
day.
it sometimes.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm going to talk to the camera for a second. I'm sorry. And to my sister, Shannon, who's here helping us. Shan, I can't read the screen. So can I use your phone to read the questions? Because it looks like there are a lot.
Sure.
Are you following along as well?
There's no internet on that.
Okay,
so.
well. Yeah, it looks like there are a lot of questions. And although I think we're going to leave them for the end, it would be nice to see what's coming in. Because if it's relevant, I would be happy to incorporate that now. I apologize for the little break. Okay,
Here, so
thanks. Okay.
do you want this? Might be easier.
If it's in the shot, then no. But wait, let's try it. Okay, I'm gonna keep asking.
It will be, but I think it's fine.
Okay, fine. Then yeah, let's bring it in. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, let's continue with the questions. How are you doing? You good?
Yep.
Okay. So, this guy is great. People like you already. What about me? I'm just kidding. They want you to talk about your application and interview process. It will be uploaded. So this automatically uploads. It will be up afterwards. Some people are asking funny questions in here.
I can't see them, so I'm missing out, guys.
Yeah, okay. They said, where will you hide when the revolution comes?
It's a
Okay.
good room.
Wow, there are so many questions. I don't know if we're gonna be able to answer all of these, and I think that we're gonna stick to doing most of it at the end because there's just so much. But let's talk about Harvard Law School and the application process because that came up more than once.
Sure.
People are asking about just generally the application process, how you approached it, but also if there were opportunities at Rutgers that you took advantage of that helped you think, with admissions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. So it sounds like many of you already know you want to go to law school.
Yes.
I didn't.
Okay.
I think maybe 4 years ago was when I started looking into it. And so probably back in 2014.
Mhm.
And so I started looking into what was required for it at the time. It's GPA, LSAT. I'm sure everybody knows this already. But I don't know if my situation in the application process was very, very unique beyond, if you want to talk about the studying, I can, but I think what was interesting is when I actually went to the Rutgers pre-law advisor for help, and they told me I could get into Northwestern. They said, we placed a student there once,
Yeah.
and so you could shoot high for that. That was when I stopped talking to them, and so that was the extent of my Rutgers pre-law advice.
So you were still, I mean, not necessarily rebelling, but you weren't listening to it if you didn't agree with it.
I think if you decide you want to go to a good law school,
Mhm.
and you're going to put in the work for it, then you should
Do it.
It's not guaranteed, but it's something you can try for.
Right.
But it was interesting because I think there was, at least in that office, there was a bit of a different attitude around it, in terms of what we should be shooting for. And it was the same thing. I've had this conversation about grades too, where it's a lot of my classmates at Rutgers. Some had straight A's, some had straight B's, some had straight C's.
Yeah.
And the ones who had straight B's, they often were just shooting for straight B's. Like they told me going into class, that was their target. So I think it was interesting when Prelo told me that the advisor there, if that's what you set your goal as, you'll probably get that. But
Right.
I thought,
You dream big.
if you go somewhere else, you want to go to the city and Columbia, right? That's the place to be. You got to shoot for it.
Right.
And so, at least at Rutgers, I think a lot of schools have this. The pre-law advising side needs a little bit of work, but there's a ton of other resources out there. So like top law schools, Google.
I don't know if they've heard about. No, I'm just kidding.
You may have heard of Google. So.
People are really liking you. Okay, that's awesome. I'm glad you guys are enjoying this. Okay, so did you have outside help besides obviously the pre-law counseling that you didn't find as helpful? Did you have anybody helping you?
Yeah, so when I thought about law school for the first time, I reached out to a friend he'd actually done really well in the LSAT.
Yeah.
Knew him through like a friend of my dad's son, and I knew he was going to law school the next year. So I reached out to him.
Yeah.
He agreed to get coffee with me.
Nice.
And just walked me through the application process, which wasn't complicated. It's GPA, LSAT. Don't do anything too stupid in the application. But I had never heard that before. Maybe it's because I wasn't pre-law, but I just didn't know what the requirements were.
Yeah.
And so maybe it's my personality, but somebody tells me march forward, I can do that.
Yeah.
So he said, here's the 4 things you need to do.
Yeah.
And so after that, I signed up for an LSAT course. GPA is what it is. And so I took an LSAT course for that summer and applied the following fall. Okay.
Just for anybody who's watching who's still studying for the LSAT or thinking about the LSAT, I do have a video on my channel on that topic, and I might be biased, but I think it's helpful.
I'm sure it is.
Just plugging that. Okay, so Harvard Law School, there are a lot of ideas that people have about somewhere like that going in. So I am assuming you visited before you started, right?
Yep.
But what were your expectations like going in, and what was it actually like in that first? I just mean like the first year when you were just getting started.
Yeah, I was pretty intimidated.
Yes.
Like I never thought I would go to Harvard. I didn't know anybody growing up who'd gone, and it's full of these really smart and really cool people who became my classmates, and so I was pretty nervous. I didn't know what to expect, but just was sure that I'd be out of my league.
They wouldn't accept you if it was out of your league.
That's what they say.
I believe that.
I might have slipped through, but I think what was interesting was kind of the two things to me like caught me by surprise, or at least if not surprise, it was what I liked the most about it. One is the people that really are interesting. There's a bunch of people who've done everything right from day one. They've worked really hard. They went to really good high school. They went to really good college, and they're really impressive in their own right because
Academically.
they've just always been working hard and seen the results. And that's a big part of the class. But then there's a lot of people from like every walk of life, every background. From there are other people who might have not been the best students. There are people who just spent like 3 or 4 years before traveling. There are people who are doctors. People who Jerry worked at the Supreme Court before coming to law school.
Have we mentioned who Jerry is?
My co-founder at Evisort. And so
Okay, we're gonna talk about Evisort
Yeah.
more, but just in case anybody doesn't know, that's what Jake is doing now that he's graduated. He's a co-founder and CEO of Evisort, which is a venture-backed startup, and Jerry is the original founder and a co-founder along with Jake, and he was the one who got Jake on board. So, just for context, sorry, go
Yeah.
ahead.
So I mean that was the coolest thing about my first year is there are these people that I'd never been exposed to before who are way smarter, way harder working than I was. So I love that.
Yeah.
And I think many law schools have that too. It's not a Harvard thing. It's you have to there is hard work. You have to take the LSAT. You have to make it through college
Yeah.
to go to law school.
Yeah.
And so in general, there's going to be a interesting crowd in most law schools. They'll be probably very different than what undergrad is like, especially having gone to commuter school. So
But I do think though that there's a different emphasis at every law school. Like I know at Columbia, and I've talked about this before in interviews, but Columbia focuses on work experience, and I think it seems like they value the LSAT more than maybe even other schools, even though that's one of the most important for most schools. But I think Harvard, I would say, is probably the same, where work experience, not necessarily just in the legal field, is valued. Is that right?
definitely,
I think so, yeah.
and there's a reason for it. It's,
Right.
It definitely
Brings something to the classroom, right?
taking a year or two off before law school
Right.
adds a
Gives you a
lot
different
more than I
perspective.
realized. I was in that gung ho mode of I'm gonna power through and finish school. Wish I hadn't. That's probably the one thing. Like if I could change it, I would have listened to other people take a year off. Although
What would you have done?
I don't know. I worked in private equity for about 7 months before
Yeah.
law school, and I could have stayed there,
Mhm.
or could have found something else interesting. But I came into law school pretty young, and probably could have done a bit of growing up before I went. So
We have so many questions about before you even started law school, so let's try to go through some of it quickly, just because we're already almost at the halfway mark of our interview, and we barely got past your first year. So let's just talk about it briefly. So people are asking, how did you approach studying for the LSAT? You said you took a prep course, but was it just for a summer? You did it for 3 months?
yeah, Doreen might be better than me at answering this because
I mean,
you're more
everybody.
recent, right?
Yeah, but everybody has their own way of approaching it, and that worked for them. So I think it's interesting to hear.
Yeah. I spent about 3 months studying. I took an LSAT course. This guy in New York, if anybody's taken it, reach out. I'll recommend him. But he was a really good teacher. Somebody who scored 180s himself, and
A private tutor? It wasn't a company then?
he runs his own courses.
Okay.
So he might have worked with a company beforehand,
Okay.
but now runs his own course in Brooklyn and I think in Manhattan.
Okay.
And so I took that course for 3 months, studied a lot, learned that I'm not very good at a lot of parts of it. Hated reading comprehension for whoever takes it. But yeah, I one thing that was interesting in that class was there are maybe 60 other people in the class, and a lot did pretty well. But one thing that was interesting is
It was in person?
It was in person.
Okay.
There were two types of people in the class. There were people who came in saying, "I'm going to take a course, I'm going to take the test, and then I'm going to study again afterwards and take it again, because this is just my practice test." And then my approach was, I hate studying for this,
You're just
so
gonna
I'm
give
going
it
to try
my
to.
all?
And it sucked because my life did suck during that summer.
What was your day like?
I think that might have been like the longest hours I worked, because I was also still a full-time student.
Oh my gosh, really?
I
During
was
the summer?
Yeah, I was trying to graduate, so I was taking 12 credits that summer.
Okay.
And then I worked as an EMT during college.
Wow.
And so there were a lot of overnight shifts where I'd have to work 12 hours overnight, try to get like 3 hours of sleep, and then you get now it's different. Now I try to get like 6 or 8. But at the time, there was a lot going on. But what I saw was, and I only noticed this afterwards, there were a lot of people who studied for the LSAT, took the course with the mindset of, this is my practice, and then I'll study afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And they, after 3 months is a long time.
Yeah.
6 months is even longer.
Mm-hmm.
And by month 6, they were just burnt out.
Yeah.
3 months was short enough that it sucked, but it was doable. And I was able to, you put in the 5-6 hours a day to study.
Mhm.
But it at the end of 3 months, at least it was over.
Okay, there are certain very specific questions about the LSAT that people are asking, and I don't like putting people on the spot, so I'm just going to ask it, and if you don't answer, I'm going to move on. Because it's totally okay. People want to know what your gap was like between your LSAT and your GPA and what your LSAT score was. But if you don't want to answer that, we're moving on.
Yeah, we can just skip that.
Okay, let's skip that. Sorry, because they're very persistent, but I don't think that's okay. Okay, next question. Unless there was anything else that. Okay.
One thing I will say on that
Yeah.
is, I know a lot of people take the practice test and maybe don't do very well. I think that's most people. If you talk around any law school, people who've done well at the LSAT, most people are going to end up having to improve by 15, 20 points. Many people will take it 2 or 3 times. A lot of my classmates took it. I know quite a few took it 3 or more times.
Yeah.
One of the smartest people I know at law school, I know took it 3 times, got hit a ceiling at 166, and then had to work really, really hard to get to the point where you could get into Harvard. So it's
a learnable test.
People ask me a lot, is there I got a 148 or I got a 150.
Yeah.
Is it possible still? And I think if you put in the work, it's something that you can learn.
Okay. What was the hardest adjustment you had to make once you started at Harvard?
Yeah. So there's probably 2 things. One is there really are very sharp people here. The professors are just insanely smart. Students are also, and I think what I learned over time is that you will be challenged in every direction by people here. Where if you say something, somebody will challenge you. Not in a bad way, but if you
choose to speak up, right? Or I mean, I guess you don't always have a choice.
But even in friends.
Okay.
But it's in a good way. It's a great thing.
Yeah, no.
But a lot of things that I had always thought coming into law school changed since then. A lot of my beliefs have changed.
Can you talk about one of them? I think it'd be interesting to hear how you've changed since you started.
Without diving deep, I can just say that there's, politics is always a hot topic.
Okay, fine. That's
And
good.
but a lot of views I had that I thought, when I grow up, I was definitely affected by the area I grew up in.
Yeah.
But when you move out here, you're going to get a very different view from both sides, and people will be right and you'll be wrong. And I was wrong a lot.
I'm assuming that you were very happy with how diverse your class was, because I think I'm sure that's something that Harvard focuses on when they're admitting students.
I think it's special. So yeah, I was lucky.
Okay, so in terms of well, you said that you didn't do so well during your first year, but I just have to ask, if you went to Simpson looks at grades, even if you go to a top law school, isn't that true?
Simpson, I've heard they do. Who knows?
Okay.
I think I did average first year.
Fine.
Second and third year.
Okay, so that's different. The first year is the most important. So then I would just want to ask you, so what qualities do you think you have that were helpful for you to excel as a first year?
So this wasn't something I learned. This was something a study partner of mine told me.
Yeah.
But I think my grades were very different semester to semester. And one thing that changed between the two, because I'm not a great writer. Talk about if you look at my background, I never really learned how to write. And I think the SAT was the first time I wrote an essay.
Okay.
And I sat staring at the essay on the test itself for about 20 minutes, figuring out what to write. Yeah, that left me about 5 minutes. And I didn't do very well. And so, and writing's a big part of it.
Yeah. And
so when you take law school exams, it's write responses. And so that was definitely a challenge. But one thing that I learned was there is a randomness aspect to it, but there is part of it is just learning what the professor wants to hear.
Okay. That's I think that's true, because okay, go ahead, sorry.
So I might have quoted my professors a lot in their exams. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But by I think the end of my first year semester, I was looking at their papers, just copying phrases, and it worked pretty well. Because I didn't know what it meant, but I did put it on the exam. So if you when you think about law school exams and you want to know, what grades mean, if you get straight really good grades, it's probably really impressive. But there is a randomness factor to it, and just copying quotes.
The comments are great. Okay, I feel like I need popcorn for these. I'm sorry. You can see them afterwards, because I think they can be a little distracting. Okay, so okay. I'm just gonna go straight into Evisort because I feel like we're never gonna get to it if I try to ask everything I want to ask.
Sure.
So you and Jerry met during your first year.
Yep.
You bonded over being 2 out of the 6 law students in the country. This is what he told me. So I'm not 100% sure about this, but there were 6 law students in the entire country in that Boston Consulting Group summer intern class.
Yep.
And you guys were in different offices. He was in SF, and he was in SF,
Yep.
and you were here
Yep.
in Boston. And it was really difficult. There were a lot of challenges, and so you guys bonded over that. And then I am not sure what happens next. So how did you guys were also in the same section, correct?
That's right.
So, and then how did you go from that to being, did you know that he had started a startup, and how did he approach asking you to join?
Yeah. So Jerry, like Doreen mentioned, Jerry and I were in the same section. We actually studied together for BCG.
Oh.
And so that's
Okay.
how we became close when we worked together for the interview process. Everybody else was going out, grabbing drinks every night.
Mm-hmm.
There was like a winter term where there's no grades, so everybody has fun.
Yeah, that's nice.
It was nice
I
for
wish
them.
we had. Oh, well, okay. Yeah, that's true. You were not enjoying that. Okay.
But I've heard it's great. And so we every night we're studying with a third friend of ours, Alejandro.
Yeah.
We would study every night to try to get the job,
Mm-hmm.
and we got lucky. And so
You put the hard work in.
we went in that summer not knowing what to expect. We'd never worked in an environment like that before, and it was really cool. It was really hard.
Environment in terms of it being intense and demanding and challenging.
It was challenging because we had Jerry and I were on the younger end of people in our position. Our class was basically made up of MBA students. So like in Boston office, there was 28 summer consultants that they hired. 26 were MBAs from either like Harvard Business School, MIT, Sloan, Dartmouth,
Mm-hmm.
NYU, like a variety of schools. And then there were 2 law students. And the average MBA is going to be somewhere between like 27 and 35. So they all had a couple years of experience.
You were 21.
Right. So I was about the college student's age. So it was cool. It was a learning experience. I think Jerry and I both learned a ton.
Mm-hmm.
We had to go from 0 to 60 pretty quickly. But after that summer, we got pretty close, and Jerry had mentioned to me that he had been researching a startup idea with our other co-founder, Amin. So he and Amin had met earlier a couple months back. Amin was a PhD student at MIT at the time.
Yes.
In operations research.
You guys met through HLAB?
So Jerry and Amin met through HLAB.
Which is the Harvard Law Entrepreneurship Project, which we can talk about.
Yeah.
Or no.
I don't work as closely with HLAB.
Okay, cool.
We ended up, so HLAB's a student organization where students can help founders and startups with actual legal issues while they're students.
And you work with students from other schools as well, which
Exactly.
is how Amin was involved.
Exactly.
Okay.
So Jerry and Amin met when Amin was Jerry's client on a different startup. So they,
Wow.
yeah, and it's cool. So I ended up getting more introduced to HLAB as a client too when we went to them with some questions. So
Wow.
I got to experience that side of that, and it's pretty cool that students get to do that. But
Would you say that it's one of the more powerful organizations on campus?
it's a great organization. Yeah, it's
It
If
sounds
you're
very
interested-
practical.
yeah. So I didn't actually do the student side, but
Right.
if you're interested in working with startups, one, it's a way to actually do it,
Mhm.
and two, it's with any student organization, it's a way to meet people who are interested in the same thing. And so if you're trying to meet out of a group of 2,000 students at Harvard Law, you're gonna try to meet the 100 or 50 that are interested in the same thing.
Mhm.
If you want to find students that are interested in startups, you go to HLAB.
And it's different from a clinic?
I think it's a lot like a clinic.
It's a lot like, okay. And how's it different?
I didn't do either, so
Okay, sorry.
yeah, I never did do a clinic, but so somebody else might be able to talk.
Okay,
about that.
so when you and Jerry were working on the startup, did you find that because you had that background in BCG, that you tended to approach problem solving in a similar way? Or did you rebel against the way? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But seriously, so did that affect the way that you guys approached problem solving?
It definitely maybe we've weaned off it by now, but for a long time we used terms. There's like a term called PMO, Project Management Office,
Yeah.
which is like how do you track things and run a process.
Mhm.
There were a couple terms that we just became our jargon. Our slides when we made Evisort PowerPoint slides definitely reflected that.
Yeah.
So maybe even more than we realized, it definitely influenced us. It was only 2 months at BCG, but
But it was
Yeah.
a lot of hard work, right? What were the hours like when you were at BCG?
So it's interesting because it's different than law firms. In law firms, I think it's more 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Maybe it gets a little lighter on weekends. But again, I didn't work in a law firm full time, so
You
so-
did Simpson as
yeah.
a summer,
exactly.
which is, I guess, different.
Yeah, but BCG and consulting, in our experience at least, was something where it was very much a like a weekday job,
Mm-hmm.
but very intense during the week. So from Monday through Friday, or at least Monday through Friday afternoon, your weekend was BCG's, or your weekend was McKinsey's or Bain's or whatever. And so you'd fly out to the client site. I was flying out to the Midwest every week. You'd stay there, you'd stay in a hotel, you'd work pretty much till you went to sleep, if you went to the gym or something during the day. And then next morning you do the same thing during the week. But what I liked a lot was they were very protective about weekends. And so I saw my manager scream at somebody once because she sent an email on the weekend. And that was very powerful to me. So that the weekends were nicer.
If you could describe the culture a little bit, because I think that there are law students who consider consulting, especially when they do see what it's like at a big law firm, and some people are no longer interested. So can you just talk a little bit about maybe comparing what it was like to be working in consulting versus big law?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference is there's a couple of very big differences. There's a work-life component of hard during the week, weekends off, versus law firms a little bit more spread out. And there's reasons in terms of the work you do that drives that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the biggest difference is in consulting, you're not so focused on the little details. You have to do well. Like you can't make mistakes because if you lose credibility, if you do,
Mm-hmm.
if clients see that your math doesn't add up. But in law, it's very much about making sure like the periods are right, the commas are in the right place, like not a letter is off, and there's a lot of time spent just moving paper around like that. But in consulting, it was much more focused on business objectives with a maybe not day to day, but more slightly longer term timeline where we have like 3 weeks to finish a project or a month, and our job was to solve some business issue. So we're actually saying, okay, we have a company, they're our client, and this is a problem they have, or this is a thing they're trying to do. How are we going to do it? Usually with a pretty open and broad scope. And then it was a couple weeks of just narrowing it down, getting to the answer, drilling down with some very smart people around you who guided you along the way. Law was a little bit more in the, it was interesting too, but it was much more in the like, okay, the company's doing something and they have to formalize an agreement, or they have paper they have to review to make sure that it's going to work fine. Can you do it? And it was more of a day-to-day operation.
And I'm assuming because you had some entrepreneurial interests before even coming into law school, did you find that you liked consulting more than you liked working at the big law firm?
I did, but the law firm was interesting in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
But I liked the consulting a lot because maybe it's just when I was at the law firm and I worked on some cool M&A deals where companies were buying other companies for billions of dollars.
Yeah.
But even when I was at the law firm, my mind right away went to like the why. What is a business justification for it? And even too deeply, I would like try to research like the financials they put together, the case they put together. And in consulting, that's what your job is. It's to make the case, it's to figure out should you do it, or it's to actually execute on it if they've decided to buy a company.
Mm-hmm.
But it's more on the business side of thinking about the strategy. And I just, for myself at least, it was more interesting thinking about it on that side of the aisle than it was on the legal side.
So, okay. I think we covered some things that would answer this question, but I want to ask you directly. I think a lot of times partnerships fail for so many different reasons. It's very easy for that to happen. And it's very clear that you and Jerry seem to get along really, really well. And it's not just you two, there's 3 co-founders, but I know that a lot of the discussions that you have about Evisort end up being which we should talk a little bit more about what Evisort is, if you could if you could first answer that question. But after that, I guess my question is, what do you think it is about your partnership? I know you had the common BCG background, you were in the same section, there were a lot of things, but I'd like to hear from you what you think made it work.
Yeah.
Or makes it work now.
So just a quick background on Evisort. So we're a startup that uses artificial intelligence to read and analyze contracts and legal documents. And so if you think about any company today, they have thousands and thousands of contracts that really govern everything that goes on in the company. So everything from the building that they stay in, the lease, they have a lease agreement that says they can be in that building, to they have suppliers and they have contracts with them. They sell things, and so they have contracts with the people that buy stuff from them. It drives their business. But these are documents, and there's lots and lots and lots of them, and there's a lot of information in them. And companies today are struggling to actually like, manage them and know beyond knowing that the document exists, and even that's a challenge. They're struggling to actually extract information like, what do other people owe us? What do we owe other people? When will this agreement expire? What should we negotiate? What are the terms that we agree to? And so we use machine learning to actually read these documents and pull out the important data and just present just that to lawyers, operations professionals, finance folks, really anybody in a company that cares about the information and contracts. So it's a bit legal related after all, after going to law school, but that's what we do at a high level.
And your clients tend to be not just in-house counsel, because it's less at this point big law firms. It's more like in-house counsel, accountants.
Yeah, so we work with, like I mentioned, everybody in companies who deals with contracts.
Yeah.
And so our clients have been everybody from the general counsel, the chief financial officer, like the head of supply chain. We've had a bunch of random titles mixed in there of various company-specific things, but it's really, because every part of the company gets touched by it, it's not only the lawyers. The lawyers care too, but it's not only the lawyers, because sometimes it falls on the business side folks, in fact, usually, to manage parts of these contracts. If you sign an agreement saying you're going to do something, the lawyer is not going to be the one to do it usually.
Right.
It's the business
Right.
side. Or if somebody's supposed to do something for you, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And so we thought it would only be lawyers, but when we started selling it, our clients would loop in other people in the company who would be involved. And so we went in thinking like we'd be just working with lawyers, but it's been cool because we're able to impact pretty much the entire organization when they work with us.
Has that been challenging trying, because, every person that you're dealing with that comes from a different area within the company, they probably speak a little bit of a different language, or the way that they approach things is a little bit different. So did you find that a challenge to be able to speak in that person's language and, even maybe it was explaining Evisort, or just generally just trying to, communicate with them?
Yeah, there's a lot of challenges. I think every day in a startup is hard. And luckily, like Jerry, Amin, and the rest of our team are all really, really talented to the point where they're able to adapt very quickly, and they can work with clients of every kind, even when something new comes up. Startups, law firms, consulting, really any of these big service firms, they're very structured.
Yeah.
You probably know what you're going to do the next day. There's nuance within it.
Yeah.
But you know what you're going to do the next day.
Right.
If something happens and something new comes up, you have a manager to turn to.
Yeah.
But here, it's figuring it out on your own as you go.
Yeah.
And luckily, over time, we've built up mentors and advisors who've helped us out, and we can now turn to for advice when we have questions. But it's definitely challenging.
Okay. I asked two questions, and I think
sure.
we didn't go over one of them. What do you think it was about the partnership that made it work?
One thing I will say about startups is, and this is the same thing I said a moment ago, is there's a lot of challenges. There's ups, there's downs. It's like a roller coaster. Yeah. Every time you go up, you know you're going to go down after. Like it's full of challenges.
Right.
And it's you really have to trust your team. I think really everybody on our team trusts each other with pretty much our life. Where like it's almost hard to explain, but I know Jerry trusts me, Amin trusts me, and I trust both of them. Beyond like anything I've ever had.
How did you
before.
build that trust? I mean, I see it with Jerry. Why? Because you had so many things in common. But how did you build that with your team?
They're special people, so they.
Okay.
I think when you work with them, you learn over time who you can and can't trust.
Yeah.
There are definitely people in the world who maybe you shouldn't trust. Luckily, none of them made it onto our team. But we're lucky. Our team is a very cool team, and so I think everybody on our team trusts each other. And that's important at this stage when you're 15 people or 10 people sitting in a room every day, talking to each other every day. There's no way to succeed if you can't do that.
I just want to mention now that at the end of this interview, we were thinking about giving a tour of the ILAB, if Jake is up for it. So if you guys want to stick around for the end of it, I think it'd be super cool to see. I really love this space. I mean, I don't go to Harvard, but this is something that I find really, really cool. It's all the graduate school students, or actually is it any Harvard student is allowed to use this space?
Yeah, so the ILAB is Harvard's student incubator / accelerator.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically any student in any of the Harvard schools, if they're working on a startup or are thinking about a startup, they can come here. And I guess if we'll do the tour, you guys will see it.
Yeah.
But it's basically both a workspace where you can come here to actually work on your startup. They have a lot of resources. A lot of really cool people come in every day
Yeah.
and spend
I
time
can
with
only
startups.
imagine.
Some of our investors have floated in here.
Wow.
They do surprise visits in a good way. It's actually cool. But it's a place where just all the students who are working on startups can come together. When we're facing issues, there are other teams here that are facing similar issues, and they can help us. We can help them. They're really cool advisors. Like we sit next to one of our advisors, Howard, and anytime we have a question, we just shout it over to him.
Nice.
And so it's a pretty cool workspace, and we'll, I guess, show everybody afterwards.
Okay. Awesome. So, would you say that? I mean, I would assume so, but would you say that you are less risk averse than the average law student? Because law students tend to be more risk averse.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I think it's startup is scary.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
Because there is a lot of risk. If I go to a law firm, I know exactly what I'll earn in 7 years.
Yeah.
I can literally say what my salary will be unless they raise it. It's not going to go down. Startups are definitely different,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe it's because we've done it for 2 years. But it's something where I'm just excited about it that maybe I don't even think about that side as much anymore. Now it's become what I do every day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, again, part of having a really good team around you, is that you focus in on the end goals, maybe less so than the will we fail, but more how are we going to succeed.
That's amazing.
So it's lucky to have a good team.
So, speaking about being risk averse and working on the startup for 2 years, how were you able to turn down an offer from McKinsey in order to continue this? How did you approach that decision making process?
Yeah, it wasn't really much of a decision,
No.
but I think
Okay.
it was almost a given, because
Okay.
I'd worked on Evisort for long enough that it was very clear what we'd be doing.
Mm-hmm.
What I will say is that I don't think I made necessarily the right choice compared to what others should have done. Everybody's got their own thing.
Right. And this is
And
not
so-
about
Yeah.
it's just about, it's interesting to hear about your path.
But what all of us, we were just talking about this the other day, but what all of us on our team have in common is we know there's an issue. Like the legal world is changing a lot. What lawyers are doing is changing. What people think about legal documents is changing.
Mhm.
And we had the option we could go to law firm, we could work hard, and we could watch, and it would change still, like, over time. Or we could be part of it and help push it forward. And it was a change that we believe should happen based on what we'd learned, what we'd heard, the actual work we did at law firms. And so when it came down to it, we wanted to be the ones to do it. We wanted to be the ones that help change how the industry operates and help change what people in the industry do every day to make their lives better. I think it's when you don't have to look through and read a 50-page document and can spend 1 minute instead on it, your life's a lot better. You go home earlier, you have better results, your company does better. And so, and when we hear that with our clients, it makes me feel good. Like it's a nice feeling. And so maybe it should have been a harder decision, but when it came down to it, this is what we're all passionate about. And so it was a no-brainer.
So then what made you apply for McKinsey?
At the time, so I'd been looking at consulting before.
Right, BCG.
Yeah, so I was assigned between BCG and McKinsey.
Oh, wow.
And the difference was just cities. If we jump back about a year and a half ago,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be in New York. And so BCG, my offer was for Boston, McKinsey, my offer was for New York.
Mhm.
And that was why I wanted to have that option, not just a Boston offer, but a New York offer. But none of that mattered in the end. So
We have so many great questions. How are you time-wise if we go maybe like 5 or 10 minutes over?
sure.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Sorry to put you on the spot. It's just people are asking really great questions, and I want to ask that. And I think I have just, a few questions. I'm going to try to cut it short. Did you ever consider dropping out?
Of law school?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay.
We talked about it all the time.
And what happened?
So this is recorded, so I don't know how much I should say.
Okay, say whatever you feel comfortable with, and we can, yeah.
I will say that law school is interesting. If you want good grades, you have to work really, really hard.
That's true.
It's like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of smart people here.
Yeah. And it's on a curve, so it doesn't matter.
Right.
You can all be hardworking, but
Coming into it might be a
Yeah.
bunch of people who got A's every day in college.
Yep.
And I guarantee that 2/3 won't get an A here.
Mhm.
And so if you want good grades, you got to work hard. But the flip side is if you don't want good grades, you can choose to focus your energies elsewhere. And so I would say our second and third years, the ILAB actually became our home basically.
Mhm.
Spent a lot more time here than I did in class,
Mhm.
and the school was nice to us. And
And you don't regret that, do you, at all?
no, I'm glad I did, and I probably should have spent more time here.
Nice. Okay. So that was one of them. The other one was when you were speaking about the fact that you really wanted to do a startup because of the way that it was affecting people's lives. I'm just curious, like, do you have a vision of what you want, how you want to impact the world, or the purpose that you have, like internally a mission or a mission for Evisort? Obviously, you've touched on that, but I'm just curious if there was a way that you were thinking about the world that you were like, this is why this makes sense to me to like pursue this.
I think we are fundamentally changing what it means to be a lawyer in a company, not in a way where it's hurting them, but more it's making them better. It's making companies better, and it's
And you're not talking about just law firms or anything like that, because it's not just law
we
firms.
we work mostly with companies. So
Yeah.
lawyers in companies that they've hired to be their own internal counsel. We work with other people in companies, but we're all fundamentally what we're doing is not. It's not just selling a product. It's we're actually making their lives better.
Mhm.
And so I think, and the impact that we can have there is huge because we have endless ideas of things we want to do that we want to build over time. And each of these things are things that people today do manually or spend a lot of time on, and things that technology has been built out that can help them out.
Yeah.
And so when you think about what you should be doing in companies, humans are complex. There are things they can do that machines can't. And that's probably what we should be doing, as opposed to things that we can automate. And nobody wants to do repetitive. Nobody wants to copy and paste stuff from Excel spreadsheets all day.
Mhm.
People want themselves to be doing more impactful work. And so what we've built is not just something that I think helps companies. It helps people in companies be more impactful. And I want to keep doing that. I know our team wants to keep working on that. With that in mind, of we can help a lot of people in that way.
So how do you respond to people like current students who are afraid that AI is taking over their jobs? Because I don't know if that's I don't necessarily, that's not necessarily an opinion I have, but I'm curious how you would answer that.
I don't think that's the issue. I think humans are different than what AI does.
Okay.
But what I will say is that there definitely is a requirement for both companies, law firms, everybody to adapt.
Yeah.
So if you look back 30 years ago, the way law firms worked, I don't know if they had computers then or it was typewriters, but it was very different than it is today. Now everything's on Word, and people work a lot faster. If you need to research something, they have legal search engines. They're not going to go and go down to the library and pull out a book. And so the industry is constantly changing, and I think the legal industry will evolve with it. And when you go to law school, your classes in 5 years are going to look different than what they look like today. I don't think lawyers are going anywhere. I think what it means to be a lawyer is going to shift over time.
Okay. It's just so hard to pick. What do you think what keeps you driven, not necessarily just now, but like throughout your path, like when your pre-law counselor told you this is where you should aim, and you're like, no, that's not my ceiling and that's not my goal. What was driving you?
So I think I have a lot of things that I think drive me.
Yeah.
But if you're not surrounded by other people who are also driven, and all that's worthless. And so, like, part of being in the innovation lab, for example, is that you're surrounded by other people who are driven to work on a startup, which by definition is something that's likely to fail. I think we're the exception, but it's likely to fail. It's going to be hard. You're fighting uphill. There's probably a bigger company you're fighting against. And so they all have to be very driven. And when you're here, I'm surrounded by the same types of people who are working very hard towards it. And so it almost makes that anything else is not an option. And I've been lucky at other points in my life to be surrounded by similar people who have that same attitude, where they view their job as to get it done and to do what they want to do, even if maybe the odds say they shouldn't.
Okay, so at this point, thank you so much. I think that's it for the questions that I'm going to ask you. I'm going to try to incorporate some questions that other people have asked,
Sure.
just to make sure that we get some
Let
of these.
him look through.
You can
There
pick
is
one.
so much,
Go
so,
for
so
it.
let him look through the questions and answer whatever he wants.
but a lot of them are not real questions.
I'll let you pick them.
Maybe you've touched on this a little bit, but how will Evisort change the legal world?
Yeah, I talked about it, but it's going to change what it means to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
And that it lets you focus more on the analysis side, more on the thinking about the legal issues, instead of doing things that don't require any legal training. Because when you're a lawyer, that means you've been through 7 years or more of school.
Yeah,
And so you've got a lot of training. You have specialized skills. When you work for 3 years as a lawyer, you have a lot more specialized skills. And so I think when you think about why you want to be a lawyer, if you're thinking about why you want to go to law school, going through it, searching for tax, that didn't require 10 years of training.
right.
And so that's what's going to change, I think, for lawyers everywhere. And it's a good thing. It'll make them better, and it'll make the job more interesting.
Okay, so Ivana is asking, did the anti-entrepreneurial spirit of law school ever rub you the wrong way, or did you appreciate seeing other perspectives?
Anti is a strong word. I don't know if I'd use that. I think there's definitely a lot of students who go down a very, there's a very structured path
Right.
towards big law.
Yes.
But I wouldn't say it's anti-entrepreneurial. I think our classmates were very supportive and are excited for us. And so I wouldn't say that, but there's definitely.
I think what she's saying is just that you really are going against the grain and sorry, go ahead.
So, but there's definitely, what Doreen said is right. You are veering from the guaranteed path where it's very safe, it's comfortable. You don't have to do any work. After first year, I had my offers. I didn't have to do any more work. I could just sit back, watch Netflix all day, which to be honest seems nice, but I could have done that and just gone to a law firm. So yeah, it's there. The option is there, but I think if something catches your eye, once you get the bug for it and you're interested and you want to do it, it slowly just becomes what your focus is on, and maybe that path just didn't seem like an option after not too long.
How did you manage running a startup and going to law school? I mean, I also think you addressed that just a bit, but maybe if you can talk about that a little bit more.
There's 24 hours in a day, and so you choose to allocate it to studying, you can choose to allocate it to watching TV, or you can choose to allocate it to a startup. And I would say everybody on our team allocated much more of the time to working on the startup than they did to studying, and pretty much minimized. There's some baseline, and that's exactly what we did, and not a minute more. And so we made the choice that grades weren't the most important thing for us. Building as fast as we could was much more important. And
which you have to, right? With a startup, if you're not building as fast, the money just runs out a lot of times.
Yeah, I mean, and we have expectations we need to deliver on.
Yes.
We're not. It's not in a bubble. There are companies that are using what we built, and so we need to always be improving it and making it better and making sure it works. And so yeah, it's a bit different. That was one thing that I think is very different from school projects, which is you work on something, the semester's over and it's done. You never look at it again.
Right. This is long term, much more long term.
It doesn't end in that sense, because what you've built, you then are going to have to give out, fix when there's issues, make better. And so there's excitement about that, but there's also the additional work that's required for it.
So can you say what a day would look like for you, or a week?
I think it varied a lot.
Yeah.
But it's the last semester it was wake up, you go to the ILAB.
What time? Because I really think people have asked me multiple times about day to day. So I think people are curious to hear how the breakdown looks like.
Yeah.
And I know it varies, but it'd be interesting to hear just. Yeah.
there's different startups at different stages, but for the stage we're at,
Yeah.
it's our job. It's more than a job, but it's also is our job.
Mhm.
And so the same way you wake up in the morning, you get dressed and you go to your job, and then
Yeah.
you work there until till you get done what needs to get done for the day. That's basically what it became for us.
Yeah.
So
And when you were in school, like maybe how many hours would you spend? What was the minimum, if you had to say?
so my last semester, I did not work very hard at all in school.
Yeah.
I skipped a lot of classes.
Yeah.
There were some classes I never went to, and so
Your friends called you out on that, by the way.
yeah. This might have to get cut from the video, but I think I spent about 15 hours total last semester in school.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's the baseline.
And what about your your third full semester in law school?
So that semester, I think it's just been a downward line where every semester has been less and less, except for the occasional semester where I screwed up and took the wrong class.
Yeah.
But I think it just went down every semester from first year, where maybe the third semester did more work than the fourth semester, did more than the fifth, and so on.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, there were so many questions. Okay, maybe one thing that I'll ask you is how did you decide what you would talk about in your personal statement?
So I'm not a good writer, so people probably shouldn't listen to my advice here.
You got in.
What I will say is, for me, like when I grew up, because I lived in a religious community and then I lived in a more non-religious life.
Yeah.
It felt like I'd lived in two different worlds, and so I chose to write about that because especially at that point in time, that was what had been like most of my life experience. Seeing something from a community where it's very close, it's close-knit, like to help each other, but they also like to keep everything in the community, versus out in the world where it's a bit more, there's a lot going on out there. And so I chose to write about just the experience moving from one to the other, where, like I mentioned, I didn't know what a bachelor degree like major is. I didn't know how to write an essay. I didn't know really like how the world worked, and I'm still learning.
Yeah.
But that to me was definitely what had affected, and I was still learning, of course, but what had affected my life at that point. And so I chose to write about that because that was what was most personal to me.
I just want to say, I don't like giving too much advice, but I do want to say that I think one thing that does work for personal statements is talking about something that's very unique to you, because nobody else, there are not that many people who could talk about the things that you were talking about in your personal statement. And I think that's what makes it really powerful, is just it's so unique to your story and how you got to where you are.
I'm pretty sure I still wrote at the bottom, like, I want to be a lawyer and here's why.
Right. But still, that part of it was very unique to you.
Yeah.
So instead of straying away from something that made you unique, you focused on it. And I think that's helpful.
Yep. I will turn to you for any personal statement advice, because this is like one thing I know I'm not good at.
Okay. I'm sorry. I think that's if you want to do one more question and then we'll.
Sure.
Okay, so Jamal asked, do you have any advice for high school underachievers that weren't motivated in school?
I think it's for every person, it's a personal journey, but maybe it's worth asking why.
Why you want to do what you want to do?
Well, why isn't he motivated?
Oh.
Because, I mean, it's not after high school, everything's magically necessarily going to change. But everybody's got different things that motivate them and different things that interest them. And maybe in high school you have to follow a track, but maybe in college you can do what actually catches your attention. I think having some sort of longer term goal definitely helps. If it's law school, if it's something else, that's important.
Yeah.
But I would probably start with the why, because that's the most important thing. If you're not motivated, why you're not motivated, to me, would be the first thing I'd ask.
Okay. Thank you so much. This was such a fun interview to do, and I really appreciate everyone for contributing questions. I'm sorry we didn't get to answer all of them, but I think if you leave comments underneath the video If Jake is willing, he can answer some of the questions. And if you want to talk about the fact that Evisort is hiring, that's also.
If there's any engineers or data scientists out there who are looking for alternatives to law school, they can or great engineering experience related to that. We're growing our team and making a bunch of hires right now.
Yeah.
And so definitely reach out and give us a shout out.
Okay, so let's do the tour of the Harvard Innovation Lab. I haven't done this before. This is something we're just trying out, so I apologize if it's not perfect, but I am going to let Jake take the camera and kind of do this live vlog style.
Sure.
Let's do this.
All right.
Okay. Okay. So it's going to be focused on you. I'm going to turn the mic around. There you go. So you can kind of just, ooh,
Yeah.
okay. Are you good?
All right. This might be hard, but we can try.
You don't have to, I mean, I don't have to be in it, but we'll walk around together. And, yeah. You good?
Okay, this might be hard, but we're in the Harvard Innovation Lab now,
Yes.
which is, like I mentioned, the incubator. And so if you look around, you can see it's, there's, okay.
Ooh. Okay.
There's a lot of workspace here, a lot going on. It's a pretty big building. We just came out of the,
The only thing is, if the microphone is not on you, it might not hear you.
I might flip this around.
Oh, you want to flip it?
Right there. All right,
Let me see.
let's flip it this way.
On that side.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
So this is where we just were. This is the podcast room.
Nice.
It's basically they have a soundproof room in here where you can record, but in here is where most of the team spend most of their time.
It's not usually this empty, obviously. It's just that,
What time is it now? 10 p.m.
yes,
Yeah.
past 10 o'clock.
Um,
Do you want to show Jerry? Let's get Jerry.
and so this is actually where we work every day. So these are
Hey.
Amin and Jay.
These are the two co-founders, correct?
Yep.
So all three co-founders are here of Evisort, and there's their sign back there.
And so there's a lot of cool teams here. If you look around, you'll see some of their signs. And this is basically where we work. There's also a lot of open desk space. So you see all these desks here. People come in every day. They sit down. They work with their team. And this is basically like there's maybe about 50 to 70 startups that are based out of this building. There's a lot of writing, so you can write on all the walls here. I enjoy that a lot because when I was a kid, I liked to write on walls.
And now you can do it without a problem.
It's great. There's a lot of conference rooms. If you look around, you'll
See
see.
inside it.
Sure.
I mean, I guess it's not that special. It's just a conference room.
It's the same thing, writing on the walls. This is just one of maybe about 30 of them. So when you're here and you're working with your team, you can bring people here for team meetings, for client meetings, just to take a call.
This is not sponsored, by the way.
This is definitely one of the coolest parts of school. So,
Yeah.
But I'll show you the coolest part because this is my favorite part. So there's a really cool kitchen with unlimited coffee and Coca-Cola. And there's also snacks here usually. So there's snacks there and there's snacks, free food. And so every day when we're here, if we want drinks, we want snacks, we can come here, grab a bite, don't have to run far, don't have to pay for any of it. They don't require any equity, it's all free. You can see some of the teams on here. This is us.
Oh, you guys are almost centered.
It's a nice photo. That's
Yeah,
Derek
it's-
on the right. He leads our product development.
Nice.
And so that's our team maybe a little over a year ago. And then here there's more co-working space. And so this, again, more teams every day are here. There's a classroom in the background you can see. One of the cool things is if you see all these cubicles, there's a bunch of desks here for people who work here full time. And those are our full-time staff that their job is to help us out. And so they're here every day, and whatever questions we might have around startups, around their company, things that they've seen a lot of, they can help us out with. And they're just here every day full time. helping us with that. More lounge space. There's a gong, and so
Can we bang it actually?
go for it.
Wait, with what? Just our hands?
Behind it.
Oh.
So when you do something cool, like you sell to a client, you raise a round, you hire somebody, you can come here and hit the gong and
Can I
announce
hit
it.
really hard?
Go for it.
All right, that was fun. Okay.
Okay. Some of the teams that have been here and have done really cool things, like raised tens of millions of dollars, are featured on this as well. One of my classmates was on here.
Yeah.
A lot of cool teams that have come out of here.
Okay.
There's also Open Lobby. You can see it out there.
Are there any teams that they would maybe know about?
There's a team Getaway. They're
Okay.
like a tiny house hotel, and they were on Shark Tank.
Wow. That's
So
so cool.
I think there's probably been like half a dozen teams out of here that have been on Shark Tank.
Okay.
Not
wow,
sure of the
that's
other.
actually incredible.
Not sure of the other companies.
What about this stuff?
So
There are a lot of
there's a lot of free resources here, and so there's lawyers who come in every day. There's like people who help you with all the things you hate, like tax. People help with marketing. There's a lot of resources around helping us out to make sure that we're surrounded by smart people who know more about issues that come up than we do.
Okay. Is that the motto? Further, faster?
That is.
Because I haven't seen that here before. It's new?
Yep. I don't know.
Okay.
Good question.
That's what I'm
So
here for.
this is more space. There's a bunch more teams that are based out of here.
If we were here during the day, most of these tables would be full?
Yeah, this place would be packed. People would be annoyed that we're talking so loud. No, maybe not. There's also a VR lab here, and so
Wow, that's so cool.
can't really see that much, but it's basically if you're a startup working in the VR space.
Does the light turn off?
Not sure.
Okay.
Anyways.
Well, I think you need a... Yeah.
They have like sensors and all the latest technology that you need for AR or VR startups to actually test out what you've built here. And so they're pretty much geared for every kind of startup you can think of in terms of giving you the resources you need to actually build your product out, test it, and get those.
Sorry, go ahead.
And so there's also a hardware lab on the other side, where if you're a team that's building an actual product, so maybe something for a Kickstarter, where you have a whatever the latest gadget is,
Yeah.
and there's some teams that have come out of here. I think one team just sent something to space based on what they built out of here. But there's a lab over here where
Careful with the mic.
there's a lab here where teams have actually can come and build things. You have everything from the 3D printers to soldering equipment, and really everything you need to actually build a hardware product. And so Love Pop is actually another famous company out of here, where they build these pop-up cards.
Nice.
And so they used to work out of here, and there's a bunch of other teams too.
Okay.
So I think that's it.
Okay.
Here's Evisort team again.
Here, let's turn it around just to see. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you, Jake, so much for that tour and for answering all of those questions. And tune in there. I'm hoping to do more episodes maybe twice a week on Sundays and Wednesdays. And so I'll keep you guys posted. But if you subscribe, you'll hear about them. And yeah, just like the videos, share, all that fun stuff that I'm supposed to say. And yeah, thank you guys so much for joining, and thank you, Jake, so much, and thank you guys for asking all of your questions. I
Thank
think
you.
that's more, Jake. They want more of you.
Joe's fine. He's got enough.
Okay, well, thank you guys so much, and have a good night. Thank you for joining us.